Thank you, Michal, and good morning, everybody. You're all very welcome here, and thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm going to give you some information today about what's happening in government, hopefully something that you don't know. So just tell you what things are coming down the tracks in the circular economy area. I'm not going to explain the circular economy to you. You're all experts and you know all about that stuff. But what I do want to talk about a little bit is the burden of responsibility for how we move forward between what does government have to do, what does business have to do, what does the non-profit sector have to do, and what does the individual have to do. So it's going to take effort from all those different groups. We know what we want to do. There's general agreement that we want to advance the circular economy. So how do we do that, and who's going to do what? So that's kind of roughly what I'm going to talk about. I was really happy to see that report. I'm regularly seeing reports from the EPA. They usually end up with criticism of the government. But I saw that the latest report was one of the latest reports was on contamination in bins. I think it was called waste characterization, but it's basically people putting the wrong things in the wrong bins. And there was a very clear diagram of what's in a black bin and what's in an average green bin. And you could see that most of the stuff in a black bin is the wrong stuff. So there's a lot of plastic and there's a lot of food waste in there. And that's the same whether you're in someone's home or in a business. I think businesses might have been worse than homes because a lot of them weren't segregating up to then. So I think that message is very clear. And the message to the public is that you can save money. And I don't know if this confuses economists. They look at this and think, well, why are people putting the wrong thing in the black bin when they just moving their arm to the other bin would save them money? Aren't people supposed to be entirely motivated by making money for themselves? And clearly they aren't. And the challenge here is about changing culture and habits. And how we do that, communication, inspiration, talking to young people, we know roughly how we're going to get there. But there are a number of changes we're going to do in government that will help to get there. So one of those changes, of course, is that not everybody has a brown bin. And it is the law, it is European law, that everybody has to have a brown bin by the end of the year. So the regulations to provide for that have been drafted and will be out very shortly. So what that will do is it will require waste collectors to provide organic bins to every household in the country. That will go out for consultation in the next couple of weeks. Other changes that are coming, or have come, you will have noticed that on the 1st of July of this year, we brought in the mandatory segregation of waste for commercial entities. So every business now has to be provided with both a black bin and a green bin and a brown bin. They must segregate their waste, and I expect that this is going to lead to a much greater availability of both of feedstock from the brown bins, of availability of plastic for recycling. I think it's going to improve our statistics simply by making that change. So that change came in on the 1st of July, and I think it's also important from the public's point of view that we are not sending out a message to people that everything that has to happen in the circular economy is a responsibility of the individual, that we are also clearly saying these are the things that business has to do. Without that feeling, without that sense of some form of fairness, people aren't going to want to change their own behaviour. We also made a change on the 1st of September this year, where for the first time we've brought in a recovery levy. And this is really a gate fee for incineration. So for every tonne of waste that's brought to an incinerator, there's a gate fee of €10. And that translates to 1 cent per kilo for people either in their home or their business. Every kilo that they put into the black bin is going to attract an extra levy of 1 cent. Now, I understand that the waste collectors have to pass that charge on to their customers, and one of them wrote to their customers to tell them that it was all coming from me, which is true, which is fair enough. But I noticed that one of the waste collectors has simply increased their standing charge, and that's not on. That's not okay. So I'll be dealing with them on that. The whole point of increasing a levy on residual waste is to deter people from putting things into the black bin, and if it's just added onto the standing charge, then there is no deterrence, and that has to change. So that's not okay, and that's something that's going to happen. We had the same problem with energy, with people energy companies increasing their standing charge in response to a change in the price of gas. Next I want to talk about green public procurement. We have, thankfully the EPA did this nice document. I think it sort of dovetails with what the work that the EU had done, which is a green public procurement document that explains how in 10 key sectors the state can purchase in a way that's green, how we can do our procurement in a way that helps the environment. That was, I think it's also, the main thing about that is that it's very accessible, very easy to understand, and one of the officials in the Office of Government Procurement wrote a really nice tool which allows people who are procuring goods to generate the conditions and the tests to check that something actually qualifies as green procurement according to the EPA's guidelines. So there's been good cooperation between the EPA and the Office of Government Procurement on that. But what there isn't is a document that describes a kind of an overall strategy for procurement. And Laura Burke referred to this. We have a document called Green Tenders, but it's from 2012, so it's clearly well out of date. And we've been updating that document, and this is to give an overall strategy for green procurement, not just referring to individual criteria for individual sectors, but actually saying what we're trying to achieve and how we're doing it. And that document is going to go out for consultation later this week, and that will refer to things like requiring public purchasers to get a certain proportion of renovated IT equipment. So I noticed that, for example, that in the upcycled IT equipment sector, that companies who were taking leased IT equipment and upcycling it were able to sell it into the private sector easily, but we're having great difficulty selling it into the public sector. So I'm going to change the rules on that, or at least I'm going to put them out for consultation this week. I'd invite you all to read them, because you're the kind of people who will read them and comment on them. But they also extend to lots of other areas. So, for example, we're going to change the rules about when the state is buying food for canteens, public sector purchasing of food, and so on. And I'm sure there are people in this room who worked on that strategy. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Again, it's a collaboration between the Office of Government Procurement and DEC and my department and EPA, I'm sure. Next thing I want to mention is our food waste prevention strategy. So we're trying to cut food waste by 50% by 2030. I launched a food waste strategy with Charlie McConlogue, and I can see that he's got genuine enthusiasm for this. We went down to Food Cloud in Tallaght, who are exemplars in this area, and I feel we are really going to make progress in this area, and it's going to save people money. We're producing 800,000 tonnes of food waste in Ireland every year. Not all of it from individuals, a lot of it from restaurants and from shops, so business does have a large part to play in this, and also from the agricultural sector. But it's an area that people can relate to, and it is something we're making progress on. I want to move to textiles for a second. So there hasn't been, I suppose, a lot of focus on what happens with textiles, how they're recycled in Ireland. I think we're used to the idea that there are clothing bins, often at civic amenity centres, but there hasn't been very deep thought about what to do with this. I'm glad to see the retail sector and the fast fashion sector responding and trying to at least engage in conversation. I think people would accuse them of greenwashing, but at least they're getting involved in talking, and I'm talking back to them and listening to them. And I've set up something called a textile advisory group, and we have people on that like Gwen Cunningham and Carolyn Moore, and they will be coming back to government with recommendations on what we can do for textiles. And at the same time, while that's happening here, the EU is working on their strategy, and I'm expecting that the EU is going to come up with an EPR for textiles. So I'll be interested to see what comes out of that. Also, I noticed that the French are doing a subsidy scheme to persuade people to fix and recycle their shoes and clothes, which was ridiculed by some, but I think that's an interesting idea as well. So a lot of things are happening at EU level. I'm regularly in Brussels and Luxembourg at the Council of Ministers, and I point out things like the packaging regulation, work on food waste prevention, work on critical raw materials. So again, there's just a general consensus at EU level that circular economy is something that has to happen for strategic reasons. So even people with no interest in the environment don't want Europe to be in a position where it is dependent on long and weak supply chains to run its economy. So we've got that kind of coalition between people with an environmental interest and people with a sort of interest in strategic resilience. I think I'm seeing a lot of progress on that, and I'm seeing a pattern where I'm trying to work on things in Ireland, and then I'm seeing that the EU is taking it up as well, and then there's a bit of a race on because I want to do what I want to do before they get their bit in. So an example of that would be the disposable vapes. Disposable vapes are a relatively new invention. I suppose during the pandemic they really began to become very popular. There was an explosion of use of them. You can see them all over the ground. They look like coloured highlighters. You have a device which is used for about 48 hours. It contains electronics, it contains lithium-ion batteries, plastics and metals. It gets tossed on the ground when it's used. It's clearly not part of the circular economy and something that we need to get past. And I know that we Ireland has brought in a system whereby you can put your vape back into the same box that you put your batteries into, but we're getting a very, very low rate of return. So my feeling on this is that the disposable vapes were a replacement for an already reusable, refillable product. So why would we invent something that was substantially worse in every way and also has a much, much higher total cost of ownership? In other words, its life cycle cost was much higher, and also it clearly is designed to appeal to children. Cola bottle flavour, the colouring, the marketing, everything about it is aimed at kids, and indeed there's very, very high rate of use amongst teenagers. So my view on this was that my instinct was to see if I could ban it legally. I put out a public consultation on that. I had more than 3,000 responses, about 85% of them asking that I ban disposable vapes. I'm considering what my response is going to be on that. I have a range of different options, and deposit return schemes and EPRs and taxes and so on. And I'm looking at what's happening in other European countries. I'm looking at the laws and what I can do with regards to that. But I'll be coming back soon on that. And there's clearly groundswell of public opinion who want to do this, and it's the same across Europe. So a parent in France or in Germany is exactly the same as a parent in Ireland. They're facing the same problems. And so at EU level, there is a move towards banning disposable vapes. That may come out as a regulation from the health ministers, and I'll talk to the Perm Rep and to the Department of Health about that and see whether we can do our scheme before it happens at European level. I don't want to delay it too long because there is an explosion of addiction, and I think it's something that we need to tackle. So the 1st of February next year is going to be a huge milestone for circular economy in Ireland. It's an exciting time because on the 1st of February next year, we are going to go live with our deposit return scheme. Every supermarket that you walk into in Ireland is going to have this physical presence of a machine that you can put your bottles and cans into and get money back from. We've seen other jurisdictions that have tried to implement this over a very long period of time and then not managed, so it is not an easy project to do. I've constantly tried to limit the scope of it, so I just picked metal and plastic, or rather aluminium and PET plastic, but we can increase the scope in later versions, and we can look at enhancements. But basically, we're starting off with a scheme which is going to try to recover the vast majority of nearly 2 billion cans and bottles that are used and just thrown away every year. I think that number is absolutely shocking, but one of the great benefits of this scheme is that we will have this huge supply of really clean and really well sorted materials, which will spur businesses to do more recycling in Ireland. I think that a lot of the materials that we collect, a lot of the raw materials that we collect through segregation of waste are simply shipped outside the country, and we don't have a well-developed actual reprocessing and recycling sector in Ireland. I've seen some facilities that are doing it, but I think that we're going to go a lot further. I think that the better segregation of waste from commercial waste and the added to the deposit return scheme is going to spur innovation in that area. And again, I think our statistics are going to improve greatly on plastic and aluminium and on containers as a result of this scheme. So I'm really looking forward to that going live. Again, very, very broad popular support, and the buy-in of business and retailers and the non-profit sector as well. We're trying to implement it in a way that works, and that works for everybody, whether you're a big or a small business. And I am very confident it is going to launch on the 1st of February of 2024. Okay, I want to talk for a second about something that Laura Burke referred to, which is the construction and demolition sector. This is the largest area of the circular economy, and although bottles and cans and coffee cups and so on are the things that people can relate to, it is the construction and demolition sector that we need to fix. And I've been on site with builders, and I've been around to facilities that can reprocess reinforced concrete, or can take waste material and filter it into all the different types of aggregates or reusable products for it to be used again. I was down in Kilsaran recently. I was at Irish Cement and so on. And I've tried to listen, and I've tried to figure out what are the barriers and what are the problems. So I'm happy to hear that from Laura that there will be that she's expecting national end of waste and byproduct determinations to be published in October, and I think that is really going to help. And I also want to say that I have draft regulations in place, and that I would expect that by early next year that they will be published to support industry in developing new products from waste materials. And I'm going to bring a consultation on these draft regulations in the coming weeks. So that's something that's going to change as well. Those regulations that I'm going to change are going to dovetail with the stuff that Laura is doing with the national determinations. I think this is critical that we do this now, because we have our national development plan. It's 100 billion euros. There's a huge quantity of houses and transport infrastructure being built. It's important that we take this opportunity to build it in a way that reuses materials, that's circular, that uses low carbon cement, low embodied carbon in our products, and that we're not simply taking everything from the site, putting it in trucks, sending it to be landfilled, and then going to another quarry and digging everything else out to be reused. We have models in other European countries, and we have to get that balance right between how much we regulate and how much we deregulate. We can't deregulate too far, because we all know about what happened with mica in Donegal. So, just sort of, the answer is not going to be just remove all the rules and let people put what they want into blocks and bricks. We need a system that has that balance between enough regulation to keep people safe, but not so much regulation that people can't do the right thing. And people want to do the right thing. Like when I talk to builders, they really want to reuse the materials on the site next door, and they want a simple and fair regulatory system, or a system that's similar to what they've experienced in other European countries, so they can use a byproduct or a demolition product from construction in one site on the site that's adjacent. Okay, I mentioned coffee cups, and I'll just say in passing that although coffee cups might get a lot of headlines, that obviously it's not the largest part of the circular economy, but it is a thing. We are generating hundreds of millions of them a year, and I'll shortly be legislating for this, or rather implementing the legislation that I've passed. But I do want to point out that there have been some really, really good bottom-up projects from around the country, and one of those is in Killarney, and a woman called Louise, who is the sustainability manager of some hotels in Killarney. She managed to inspire 50 businesses around the town to go cup-free, to get rid of disposable cups. And the inspiration for that was the fact that there were 1 million of these paper cups ending up in Killarney National Park every year, and that the park itself is the whole engine of their economy. The reason people go to Killarney is because it's so breathtakingly beautiful. And so this is a threat to their economy if there is a serious littering problem. So she managed to get 50 businesses to come together and agree simply just not to hand out paper cups anymore, and to offer people alternative choices. That they lend you a cup, or there's a deposit return scheme and a cup or something. And that, I went down to see it, and to talk to people, and to talk to the people who weren't taking part, who were very few, and to see how that's working. And really what I learned from it was that the critical thing for the businesses was that they didn't have to turn to their customer and say, my cafe is not doing disposable cups anymore. They were able to turn to their customers and say, our town is not doing them anymore, but we're giving you an alternative. So it's that thing about being able to say, we're doing it together, and that we're giving you a choice. So I think that Killarney is proving that this system is going to work, that we're going to move away from our millions of cups, and I'm delighted to see the progress on that. And it'll only be a short time before we have a national scheme with government support. So overall, look, this is a really exciting sector. This is a time of huge change in society, and it's a huge change that has the backing of the public. It has the backing of the public at the sort of high level or the strategic level. Everyone agrees the circular economy is something we need to do. But there will always be challenges on the implementation and people who are feeling that they are losing out on any of the individual changes that are made. That's why we need to consult with people, and we need to listen to people and bring people with us. But overall, I see huge improvements happening in the circular economy. It's something that's making our economy more resilient, but it's also making our environment cleaner. And I think it's something that is a historic thing to be involved in. And I think that the work that you're doing is meaningful and inspiring, and I think we're all lucky to work in this sector, and I want to thank you for your work. Thank you.